Harmonics here, and today we're going to be talking about the creation of chiptune sounds. So I have this track here, and we're going to make a couple sounds just to show you, but it's called hand-drawn sounds. And the sounds you are going to hear, I think there's one that might not be hand-drawn. That one's not hand-drawn, but these ones are hand-drawn. So check it out at the beginning, and I'll just show you my amazing sculptures. This is going to be the bass, this is going to be my pluck, and this is going to be another pluck that came up over the course of some interesting experimentation. So I'll play just a bit for you. So as you can see, it's like, wow, it's really turning into something. And later on, we get moving and like the drop hits and all that other great stuff. But what happens is, how did you, your question is like, how did you make these sounds? Like, how did you decide upon these sounds, drawing sounds? Because the other methods of generation are really easy. The first one is you just straight load up a sample. So we say, oh, okay, I'm going to load up this here sound and we're good to go. And then you just use that as your sound, or you load up a plugin and then you just use that as your sound. And I have sound design videos galore for that kind of thing. But this is something that's sort of a unique, cool way to generate some sounds. And then from here, you can literally sculpt it into any piece you need, except for perhaps a drum piece, which you would have to draw it on separately. So let's go ahead and let's draw a sound and begin to see. Because if we take a look at the bass, we notice it's going through nothing. It's just being played low, and it's going through neutron for equalization. That's for the mixing stuff. And then if we come over to the plucks are going through some reverb and delay. That's what gives the reverb and delay their deal. And the plucks also have a volume modulation, a very, very fast volume curve. So that's what's going on there. So let's go ahead and make a sound. So we're going to hit Control T. I don't even know where that came from. Okay, so I'm going to put it out as its own separate thing. It's not got any effects on it. We're completely clean. And as far, if you're wondering about drum samples, I don't recommend drawing those. I'm not going to get into drawing drum samples. I've experimented a lot. It's generally not worth the effort. But you could try it if you want. So in Renoise, you can go to this draw icon. So I'm going to hit draw, and I'm going to number of samples. I'm going to leave it at 168. If you do longer, like 1 second, so it'd be 44 100, then you'll be able to draw things like kick drums and stuff and percussive sounds. You can experiment with that. It just takes a long time. And so what I would do is I just get out other drum sounds and look at what the waveforms look like and try to make something similar. So we'll hit process. That'll put my samples down. And then the draw, there's just a few general rules. Generally curvy, the curvier it is, the smoother the sound will be. So, and you generally want to max out down here, because if it's uneven, you're going to get some DC offset. So that's our sound right now. I'm going to go down. So if we play like, well, let's say we want it to be a bass sound. Let's make a bass sound first. So there we have our bass sound, and it's got that lo-fi like sound to it, which is kind of nice. And what I'm going to do is, to make it more bassy, I'm going to add in a harmonic here. Just the straight lines will generally add grit. As you can see, like the very small changes. If we add another one right around the middle of the waveform, we'll get more of a pulse sound, as you see. And if we decide to only use, let's say we want only odd harmonics, that's really easy. We know that is a square wave, right? So we could start with a square wave, and then we could like maybe add in some even harmonics. Lines will do that for you. And we get this sort of, so you see there's like a couple general rules. So lines, even harmonics. These straight lines are odd harmonics. And then curves will generally smooth things out to the idea is, at this point, writing in a curve is basically like having a filter. It's going to filter out. It's going to reduce the volume of some harmonics. It's like you're drawing in a filter. So you see it's much closer to a single frequency, because these lines, if you consider it, lines require, this is a little abstract, but I'm going to say it. Lines require much more high frequency information to exist. And so that's that. Now, if something clicked in your head right there, like, oh, because graphs and math and stuff, if you read it all up on digital audio, that'll make sense. If you think about the Nyquist theorem and the whole frequency limitation, all that kind of stuff, you'll be like, oh yeah, lines require much more high frequency information. Curves do not. And so small curves, let me qualify that, because technically you could argue these are really just tiny curves. But anyways, that's my 2 cents on making these sounds. Now that's how I would make a bass sound. So like, oh, I want some grit and something like that. These are called, there's special names for DC offset waveforms, some forms of them. I believe they're called TX waveforms, but essentially it's just like half a waveform. So we've got DC offset here. And so you can be like, okay, I'm like, cool, that's gonna be my bass sound or whatever. Now, another thing you may want to do, let's say we want to make a lead. Well, you just take the same sound up a couple octaves. And then maybe equalize it, or maybe you could try smoothing the curves out here. And so you could just try all sorts of things. Okay, so now let's look at, and you also notice that having one line will add a lot of grit. Like if we get rid of our line, it suddenly becomes way softer, because a straight line, a line like this is going to require, technically this would be impossible. So that's part of the reason why, but it's going to add tons of harmonics right off the bat, generally in the higher range. So that's going to go on there. Now, so we're going to go up. Let's say that we want to make a bell. Well, for a bell sound, we want a rather bright texture, but nothing that's got not too many harmonics. And a bell tone usually has upper harmonics that are unrelated. So I'm going to add in a couple sort of unusual curves in this. Just change the slope in a couple spots. And that's going to do it for me for right now. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to the modulator tab, and I'm going to add a AHDSR, whatever. It's a volume envelope. You see, there's our volume envelope. And we've already got, adding this to like these sounds is already going to make a huge impact. But I want my attack to be instant, my decay to be very sudden, and my sustain to be 0. And I'm going to assume, obviously I'm assuming you already know a little bit about envelopes. But now if I wanted to release that a little bit, I could bring my sustain out. And then I could also add on the effect chain, I could add a little bit of reverb. So add some verb. And we have something quite nice. We'll bring it up. And then perhaps bring the level of the sample down. But you get the idea. Like, oh, okay, we've now made a bell sound. Like, how cool is that? And away you go. Now another thing, let's say, okay, let's undo some of these things. Let's make a bass sound instead. And so I'll get rid of this envelope, and I will go back to my waveform, and I will instead draw in something. And I'll bring it down. Well, this could make, we've got our lead now. Like, boom, lead. What the heck? So let's go down to our bass. And just add in a couple. So if you get to a note, if you get really low and it begins to separate out like too much, like that, then you want to tighten up some of your curves, and that'll make this sound a little more smoking. Or not curves, but you want to add just a few more lines. You give it some more harmonics to work with. And so there you have it. You have yourself a bass. And if you want to spice it up, maybe you're like, I'm not satisfied with this bass sound, you could go in and add some distortion. And you're good to go. Like, you're already up and running. So it's really, really nifty what the power Renoise gives you for this sort of a thing. If you're working in another DAW, you open up, whatever plug, and they'll have general waveforms already there. And you sort of pick with what they give you. But here, there's sort of a little bit more you can do. So you kind of step back, think about it, think about the possibilities. And eventually, you'll be able to write out something. So just combining the sounds together, you heard what I had. And then also, I throw in some chords, an arp, and some drums, and we get this. And that's the way so many chiptune sounds are made. Like they're simple sounds. They're not these crazy sounds, and they're super great because they're so versatile. They can do so many different things, and you have so much control. It's insane. Something else you want to keep note of is my interpolation setting down here. I have it on. Basically, you'll get unwanted frequencies that come down into the audible spectrum, and to solve that, you simply turn on interpolation. I'm making this as simple as possible. Just turn it on, and you'll be good to go. Those frequencies will go away for the most part. It also there could be a number of other things going on. But so you have sync, cubic, and linear. The higher up you go, the more intense it'll get. And so it'll be harder on your processing. Now, if you're writing chiptune, you're not doing very much intense processing, so I wouldn't worry about it. But anyways, that is like general sound design 101. It's not that crazy. It's pretty simple. And as you can see, you can make some really cool sound and stuff. If you listen to any chiptune tracks, you're going to be like, oh, geez, I could like do this. Now, just a quick thing. If you want, you could really take it to the next level by if we're using FM, then that's like a whole nother ball game. I have a whole series for FM. But you want to add things that add subtle life to your track over time. So if it's just a one stagnant sound all the time, it's going to be less interesting unless your track is very compelling. And so you may consider adding like small pitch modulations in different places, stuff of that nature, which in renoise you do via the use of text commands. So like, for example, there's a glide right there. Bum, 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 and stuff like that can really just make a world of difference, because now it's not the same don 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 sound, unless you want that. I mean, it's totally dependent on your desires. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.